Hello. Hello, Garland Nixon here. And Congress is fighting with Matt Taibbi and other people. Let's figure this thing out. Let's talk. Hi, Garland Nixon here. And oh, by the way, a couple people mentioned my evil spy drone behind me. So yeah, I'm looking at you with my evil spy drone. Actually, I got a good deal on that. So a friend of mine gets this bought this drone a couple years ago, and he never used it. And so he said, "Hey man, I got this drone. It's all ready to roll, and I never really had a chance to use it. And I have a little drone." And he's like, "Hey, why don't you give me a check it out and give me an offer?" And so I got a really, really good price on it, probably half what it's actually valued at, never been used. So I got my evil spy drone there. I'm looking at you with my spy drone. All right, we're talking about fascism because I'm looking at you with my spy drone. And what brought that to mind is I'm sitting here watching online, and I'm watching the congressional hearing with Matt Taibbi and the other guy, Schellenberg, whatever the hell his name is. And the Democrats are obviously, they've taken the First Amendment out. They've beaten the First Amendment. They've stabbed it. They've cut its throat. They've thrown gasoline on the First Amendment and lit it on fire. They've burned it in effigy. Everything that you can possibly do to the First Amendment, they've done it, right? And I'm thinking, okay, let's talk, because my friends are ready to hear something about that. So I'm going to go on that. Let's start here. People throw the word around fascism. Fascism is fascist. When fascism comes to America, I could argue it'll be carrying a rainbow flag and an anti-China sign, right? People have said a lot of things, but let's start here before we get into what I'm saying, because what I said is fascism screaming, man. Fascism, neoliberal fascism is screaming. And you notice I said neoliberal fascism because one of the things that I learned from my political mentor that I never forgot, he taught me how to nuance things. My political mentor taught me how to nuance things, to break things down, right? And to understand various strains and degrees of different things. So if you talk about fascism, is there one kind of fascism? When people talk about fascism, they talk about Nazis. Well, that is a particular strain of fascism. And there's particular strains of Nazism. And I've made this point, forgive me if you've heard it before, but I'll make this point again because it really drives it home. Now, when Joe Biden said that he wanted to run for president, it was because of there was, admitted Nazis at Charlottesville, blah, blah, blah. And he couldn't stand that, right? He hated these Nazis. And there are far right-wing elements who some could maybe be considered neo-Nazis in Europe that don't support the Ukrainian project, the neocon Ukraine project. And then there are neoliberals who align very much with the Nazis. Why is that? Well, I'll give you two strains of fascism, of Nazism. And there's so I'll consider this a far right fascism. One would be an ultra nationalist fascism, right? One says this country, we want to run things in this country with our ultra nationalist way of doing things, right? Ultra nationalist. And that wouldn't align very well with the globalists because they don't like nationalism. Nationalism usually aligns with some level of independence and sovereignty, right? But the fascism in Ukraine, which might I add, was carefully nurtured by the CIA and the US over the course of the years. The US and CIA has been in Ukraine for a long time, and they've been able to nurture and develop the particular strain of fascism that is in Ukraine, is a globalist fascism. What do they say? We want to control the white race worldwide. That's globalism, isn't it? When you say we want to do X worldwide, that's globalism. So the globalists have taken the ultra nationalists and turned them into ultra globalist fascism. So the people walking around goose stepping and with their Hitler tattoos, etc., are globalists because Hitler was a globalist. Hitler wanted to run the world. Hitler didn't say, hey, Germany's the best and we're going to make Germany work. He wanted to run the world. And people who are fascists to some extent, often more or less than not, get there anyway, sooner or later. That's like, it's like if you ever hear people who say socialism and that communism is an ideal that socialists would like to get to the point where no governments are needed and everybody just works and everybody gets along so well, no governments needed, right? An ideal that people want to get to eventually. Fascism in any form generally gets to a form of globalism, and the same with elitism and all this. We're going to get into all that. So what we're talking about here, the point I was making is there are different strains of Nazis, of fascists, different kinds. There's not just one brand, just like there's not just one brand of democracy. There's different kinds of democracies. There's different levels of democracies, right? And people in a particular culture may want a different kind of democracy. And their history and their culture may develop, if they have democracy, may develop their particular strain in a different way. And you have to allow that to happen and allow countries, if you believe in independence and sovereignty, to develop their particular governments the way their culture ultimately creates it. But globalists don't want that. Ultra globalist, etc. Right? So what are we looking at when we talk about fascism here in America today? It is really a combination of a Italian original fascism, a Mussolini style fascism, where number one, it's a neoliberal fascism, where number one, the corporations and the government align. And they become incestuous. You get an incestuous relationship between the corporations and the government. Clearly, all you have to do is look at the US, and that is there. One of the most obvious places is in the mainstream media. When you look at what Matt Taibbi uncovered, when you look at what was uncovered in the Twitter files, one of the things becomes obvious is one of the critical participants in eviscerating the First Amendment was the mainstream media. The government would say, what's going on with this? The government would send, the FBI would send a list. Here's Garland Nixon and Chicken Patty, and we want them thrown off the internet immediately. Within hours, sometimes very, very soon afterwards, the mainstream media would then contact Twitter and say, hey, have you thrown Garland and Chicken Patty off yet? What's going on? What's the holdup? Are you involved? Perhaps you're witches too. How come you haven't thrown the witches off, right? So when we talk about corporations being incestuously involved with the government, you have to include the media as corporations, because now everything in the US is corporations. The media is not a media anymore. It's a corporation, and it is in business to do two things. Of course, to make money, no question, but even more so because it has been fully captured by this corporate / government entity. It's one and the same in fascism. Of course, corporations and governments become one and the same. Because the media has been fully captured by both of those, it kind of has a symbiotic relationship with both. So the media's job is to push I'll put it like this. The corporate oligarch's job is to say to the government, this is what we want. And then the government's job and the corporate oligarchs are both to get to the media and say, ensure that our narrative is controlled, ensure that our narrative is pushed, and ensure that anyone who opposes our narrative is ostracized. So the media in the Twitter files was an important part of this scam, of this operation. And so what we're looking at now is a form of fascism that I consider, and this is the term I put it, if you say ultranationalism would be fascism, then I would say ultra-liberalism, ultra-globalism. We could say that if ultra globalism, ultra liberalism, where what they do is they take traditional liberalism to a point of absurdity. so that it can be weaponized. So now what you do is you say, okay, we're a liberal and we believe in certain things, and you turn those things into weapons. So now you say, instead of saying, I'm here to look out for marginalized communities, you say, I'm here to use the concept of helping marginalized communities as a weapon against my enemies, as a way to achieve my ultimate goals. So now if I want to cut your throat, I don't just go cut your throat. I say, I've got to cut your throat because you're not being nice to this particular marginalized community. It is in no way to benefit the marginalized community. It is weaponizing everything around you. It is weaponizing niceness and goodness. It's saying, I'm here to do good. It's like when they say the advertisements where they say the U.S. Navy, a force for good. Well, the U.S. Navy ain't a force for good because the U.S. military is not a force for the good, because the U.S. military is used to enforce international neoliberalism. It's used to enforce a very, very oppressive and predatory empire. So it's not a force for good, but you got to say it's a force for good. You can't say it's a force for making the world safe for corporate oligarchs. That would be true. So instead, you just lie. So now what we have, Hitler, Nazism, traditional Nazism, doesn't try to paper over who they are. They say, we're here for the white race and we hate these groups and they should be eliminated. That's who they are. They ain't beating around the bush. Hey, what do you do? We're Nazi. We hate. Here's a list of the groups we hate and they must be eliminated. And there you go. And their Nazis are right out in the open and you can see them and they're distasteful and people are like, hey, that ain't cool. Ooh, right? So what the neoliberals learned was, it's to, you can't be all up in people's faces with your you can't be all up in people's faces with your fascism, number one. Number two, and this is critical, you want to get buy-in from people who would not normally buy into the kind of program that you're pushing. So in saying that you're acting out for good when you're doing your predatory evil stuff, number one, you blunt the attacks from those who would otherwise be able to attack you if you just put a swastika on and said, let's go take out this or that group. Number one. Number two, there's a certain element in society that will do anything if you tell them you're doing it for good. So all you have to say is we're acting on behalf of the good. And there's a certain element in society that will say, I'm on. They don't even understand what you're talking about to some extent. They're easily fooled and befuddled, and they're going to join. So you're going to bring on the idiots and the dupes. And I'm not saying idiots and dupes from a perspective of their intellectual knowledge and ability. I'm saying their ability to discern between a false narrative and a real narrative, their ability to push back on authority. So you have authority and you have a narrative that says, I'm here to do good. When they see those two things, they're like, okay, you have the authority, so I like you and respect you, and you told me you're here to do good. So, and you're saying, let's help marginalized communities and things of that nature. Let's help the poor. Let's stop evil dictators. You're saying all of these nice things. I'm in. So you get a lot of people that if you were honest about who you are, they wouldn't be down with it. But instead, you give them a fluffy coding, you give them a good cover story. That kind of fascism brings in people that wouldn't normally support fascism. Then what you also get is a bunch of people out here who are wandering around so caught up on their latest TikTok video, so caught up on trying to get the shiniest car and believe that this system works so well and that they can do well and they can be rich and that they can look like they got what they don't really have. You get so many people that are caught up in the day-to-day system that they don't take time to pull the hood up and look under the hood as to what their leaders are doing. So they just go along with it because you tell them you're doing good and they just assume that, well, the government wouldn't lie to me. They said they're doing good. They're not particularly involved in politics. They don't have a pretty deep understanding of politics because they don't look into it. So you get the criminal element that's going to do this. You get a group of people who think you really truly believe that you're doing good, and because you're authorities, you couldn't possibly be lying to them. And then you get a group of people who are out here who are too caught up in the throes of everyday life to really investigate what you're doing. So it works. So this ultra liberal people, like I said, when people think of fascism, where they get caught up is they think is there's a guy, he's marching around with a swastika on. He's a fascist. Couldn't possibly be anything else. And it's got to be overt. The guy's got to actually say, I am a fascist. And then you'll be like, okay, well, there you go. There's fascism. Now, when I looked the other day at Taibbi, I mean, it's fairly obvious to me that Taibbi is a very left-leaning guy. He's a classic lefty. And like me, there are people like us are classic lefties, right? And the classic lefties are practical and pragmatic. And here's what I would say. And now, and let me add this. There are people who say, why is it that some classic lefties like you are able to align with some classic conservatives and some classic libertarians? Oh, that's a terrible thing. That's an evil thing. Why are you able to align with people, for instance, on free speech issues, on issues of war and peace, with some people that you are ideologically not aligned with in any way? There's a word that we share. Remember this word. This is the word that aligns people of different ideologies. We all want stability. We want a stable society, right? We want a stable world. We don't want a bunch of wars. We don't want the threat of nuclear war. We don't want the threat of our economic system falling apart. We don't. And let me add this. I can get along with a libertarian and a conservative if the three of us say, okay, we're going to come up with a plan and the three of us will vote. And if two people get the vote, they win. Why? Because our intentions are good. And 2 out of 3 wins. And we try that because we do believe to some extent in democracy. Where the ultra fascist, where the fascist doesn't believe. They believe 1 out of 3 wins if that 1 out of 3 is the one with the gun. If that one has the most power, then that one wins. If 1 out of 10 wins, if that one is the one with the gun and the other 9 don't have the gun, then 1 out of 10 wins. That's how fascism works. It's knuckle dragging, fangs and claws, social and economic and political Darwinism. Whoever has the biggest gun, whoever can kill the others can win. Whoever's the most violent, vicious, and bloodthirsty and treacherous wins. That's fascism. And I can align with people that I'm not ideologically aligned with to accomplish things if we're all pragmatic. You see, we're not aligned in how we get to stability, but we all agree that we seek stability, right? And we truly agree that we seek stability, whereas the fascists don't seek stability, because they will be outed by some stability. They seek chaos. If you look at the neocons, what are they doing? They're creating chaos all over the place. They don't want stability. They live in a world of chaos. Because if they don't have chaos is like smoke to them. It's like a cover. In order to cover who they are and what they're doing, they need, if you ever see tanks, these tanks will have these smoke bombs. And when they get on the battlefield, they'll let out all this smoke. Why? Because it makes it harder for you to target them, see who they are. They want to create that smoke, create some chaos. And that's what these protests are in Georgia or wherever the hell. It's creating chaos. That's what they do. Whereas the people who are aligned against them, who befuddle people, man, you're a lefty, Garland, and that guy's a libertarian, and that guy's a MAGA guy. What the hell? You're crazy dealing with these people. We have an outcome of stability. We want stable lives. We want to be able to get up and go to work and earn a living and raise our 3.5 children and go fishing and do the things that we want to do. We want to be able to say what we want to say. We've got a lot in common. Stability is the word. International, political, environmental stability. You name it, we want stability. And we may not agree how we will get there, and we want honesty in government. That's what we want. We want a government that's going to tell us the truth, which is hard to get, but it'll tell us the truth if we're in control of that government. That's the other part that we agree on. We want a government that is bottom-up government, not top-down government. And that's the other difference. Fascism is ultimate top-down. It is focusing power like a laser beam at the top in the hands of a few. So I'm watching this thing the other day, and what we see is this. The Democrats, who are right now, don't get me wrong. Both of these parties are trash. The Republicans are a neoliberal party. Do not be mistaken into thinking that either of these parties that run the United States are not neoliberal parties. They are, it's just like I said about fascism. They are different streams of neoliberalism, but they're both neoliberal parties. All you need to do is look at their foreign policy. But at any rate, so Coming soon, I think Joe Biden just said he wants an 886 billion feet this year. He asked for around an $804 billion Pentagon budget, somewhere around there. The Congress then jacked it up to 856 and said, no, sorry, buddy, you got to take more. This year, he asked for 886. When it goes to Congress, the Republicans and the Democrats are going to come together to say, oh, man, you got to take another 40, 50, maybe even 100 billion. So they got to give him more. They got to give Raytheon and Lockheed more money to trash, to throw in a garbage can, to build their second homes with. So right now, they're having a pillow fight. And that's all good and fine. Pretty soon they'll all come back together. They'll put their arms around each other, sing Kumbaya, and give another $1 trillion to the military-industrial complex. That's a given. Okay, so what's going down? So Taibbi comes out, and the Democrats attack him. And what were they angry about? They were angry because Twitter has released background information exposing their cover story. That's all it was. It was Musk is a problem to them. What he's done is a problem for this reason. We talk about a narrative. They live off of a narrative. Neoliberalism lives off of a narrative, right? So they have a cover story. The cover story is we stand for everything that's good and we stand for everything that's right. And we're here to act in your best interest. When Musk took over Twitter, he said, okay, I'm going to bring some people in. I'm going to have them look around and they can let me know what you've been doing, right? Because they told us, they literally lied to us. They said, Twitter said to us at times, no, we're not doing these terrible things, all these things that they were doing at the time. So what have we found out? We found out that the US government was doing an end around the First Amendment. That what the US government was doing was literally sending names, sending Twitter accounts, sending all kinds of things to Twitter saying, throw these people off Twitter. That's bad enough. They were throwing people's names off of Twitter, censoring people because they didn't like what they were saying. That's one thing that was doing. But there's something else that they were doing that isn't discussed in this way. So I'm going to discuss it in a different way. They were regular everyday Americans became collateral damage. Basically, think about this. When the neoliberals go to country X and they drop a bomb and they drone something and they say, we're going to kill this guy, Joe Blow, and we're going to drop a bomb on the apartment building that he's in, but it's an apartment building full of people. So they kill everybody in the building. Men, women, children, seniors, whoever, they don't care. They kill them all, right? And they say, yay, we got Joe. What about the 90% of the people that you killed that weren't in the drone? Remember the drone wars with Obama? 90% of the people that they killed were innocent bystanders. Bystanders. They were collateral damage. Oh, well, who cares? They're them people. That's all right. That's neoliberalism, right? The face of neoliberalism says we stand up for these poor brown Muslim people. The reality is, who cares? We'll kill all of them as long as it works for us. Now, they take this into cyberspace because now they've got a narrative, number one, but they also got to eat. They also got to get paid, right? They're also grifters. Let me add this. Let me take you here, and this is important to talk about. Do not underestimate the importance of the grift, right? The neoliberal grift, the neoliberal scam is an important part of neoliberalism. It is at the heart of neoliberalism. Whatever you do, you must run a scam, right? You overthrow a country for instance, you overthrow Ukraine. Why'd you overthrow Ukraine? We overthrew Ukraine because it's on the border of Russia, and in the way that Zbigniew Brzezinski wrote his book, in the way that the Rand Corporation wrote their report, we got to take Ukraine so that we can destabilize Russia. That's the plan, right? But at the heart of that is you got to fill your pockets. So once you overthrow Ukraine, Joe Biden's son's in there, Nancy Pelosi's son's in there, the assistant deputy secretary or whatever the hell he is of the CIA, Cofer Black, look him up, Cofer Black, he's in there, he's got to eat, he's on the board of Burisma, Amos Hochstein, Joe Biden's boy for gas and all that kind of stuff. Guess what? Amos Hochstein, he's in there. So all these people are in the grift. And they're like, well, we overthrew the country and yeah, we're going to destabilize Russia, but man, there's a lot of money to be made in this country. So that's part of the grift. So when they do their dirty work, when they overthrow this country, they got to go in there and they got to make a lot of loot too, because they're bank robbers. They're at heart, they're thugs. Or it's an organized crime rig, an organized crime outfit. So when you overthrow Ukraine, you also got to go in there as member of an organized crime family, and you got to steal all the money you can steal, right? I'm going somewhere with this. Let's go back to Twitter. So number one, you're going to keep in mind. So when the neoliberal scum do one of their dirty deeds for their bigger plan, overthrow a country so that they can destabilize an adversary, they got to go into that country and pick the bones of it like vultures and steal every dime they can, simply because it's there. That's a sociopath. The money's there. They got to steal it, right? Let's think about Twitter. What was going on? Two things. And this is what Taibbi revealed. And this is what really pisses him off. A, he revealed the narrative. He peeled the onion back completely. We can thank Elon Musk. No wonder they're pissed at Musk. Number one, he revealed that they were pushing a narrative, that they literally said, look, we're going to call something malinformation or something like that. What is that? That means it's true, but it could cause something that we don't like. One of the things they looked at, they said, look, when it comes to the issue of the jab, they said people who share information that's true, but could cause people not to be hesitant to get the jab, right? So they said information, this was discovered. So one of the things they said that had to be censored was information that was true, but may cause people to be may cause hesitancy, right? So he exposed that this is not at all about the truth, that this is about protecting their narratives. This is about a complete social control. This is what I want you to do. And if there's information out there that's true, that may make you hesitant to do what I want you to do, whether or not it's in your best interest, we got to shut that information down, okay? So they revealed that they're just plain lying and that they're just plain running a scam on us. But so that's part of what killed their cover story. But there's something else that he did that they really don't like. And this is where Taibbi is now. This is why they're furious. He revealed the grift. You see, Nancy Pelosi is in there doing her warmongering stuff for all of these years. But how the hell is she worth $100 million? You know what I mean? You're making $175,000, $200,000 a year. How do you get to be worth $100 million doing that? You do through the grift. You do through using your position as a member of the crime family to commit crimes, to reach in money. So one of the things that was going on that was creating human collateral damage, and by human collateral damage, let me explain the collateral damage so this will all make sense. When I say collateral damage, I mean every now and then Taibbi will say, you know, they gave a list of people and said they were Iranian state actors, they were Russian state actors, they were Chinese state actors, they were whatever, right? So we went through the list and we found a lady from friggin' Michigan, and we called her and we said, hey, are you a Chinese state actor? She says, nah, I voted for Trump. That's her crime. And then they'll just start going through and they'll find like some schmuck who's, you know, into, I don't know, drones. And he's got a account. And he retweeted something one time, but he's got like 20 followers and he practically never gets on Twitter. That goes on the list. And you'll find all these people on the list and you're like, what the hell is this person doing on the list? They're I don't know, a guinea pig farmer. They grow guinea pigs and they sell them to pet shops, and that's what they do. So why the hell is this guinea pig farmer? What the hell's going on here, right? And you look at it, those people are collateral damage. They needed numbers. So they found one person and they said, and as an example, they said, we need Russian people who are connected to Russia, accounts that are Russian state actors. So they found like a couple people that were with RT and literal RT and Sputnik's accounts. Then maybe somebody that was with CGTN, and then maybe somebody was Press TV. Well, these are official government accounts. They ain't trying to hide nothing. If it says at RT, you know where it's coming from. So you can either follow them or not follow them. You can block them. If it's from at RT, you know this is Russia Today. If you read something from that, it's because you want to, and you should have a right to. But they'd stick those together and say, these are clandestine Russian accounts. Well, they ain't clandestine. It says right there at RT. But they didn't have another. They needed a big pile. They couldn't just put at RT, at Sputnik, at Press TV, at CGT, and there's 4 accounts, and that shows they're up to no good. They needed a lot more accounts. So what the grift was this. I have created Hamilton 68 dashboard, the Alliance for Securing Criminal Democracies and Oligarchies, the Alliance for Securing Democracies, whatever my particular think tank is. And that think tank gets money from the U.S. government. It gets money from Soros, the Koch brothers, Pierre Omidyar, all the normal billionaires, the Knight Foundation, whoever, right? So now I have this Hamilton 68 dashboard or whatever that I use, and I say, you guys got to donate money to me, the State Department, you all got to give me money. Why? Because I'm protecting American from these Russian, Chinese, and Iranian state actors, and I'm stopping misinformation and disinformation online. But I don't have enough. It's all made up. So I simply go out and I grab 10,000 accounts of average schmucks who are minding their own business. What about this guy? He's a rabbit hunter. Oh, he hunts rabbit. Yeah, it means he's into guns. Well, yeah, because he likes to hunt. He's a small game hunter. There we go. We got him. Who'd he vote for? Trump. Ooh, we got him now. A Trump voter with a gun. He's obviously a man that wants to go out and kill everybody. We got him, right? You add him to that list. That's what I call collateral damage. Because this particular think tank wants to get paid, they're involved in it for the grift, right? Sure, do they want to push the narrative? Absolutely. But they're there to eat. They're there to get paid. They're there to convince the State Department and everybody, look, guys, you got to give us millions of dollars. And then they're filling their pockets and they're dividing it up and they're traveling around. They're having seminars at the Hoover Institution and Stanford University and the University of Arizona and all these places. They're spending big bucks. They're living great. And they're able to do all of that because there's a narrative that the government wants pushed, and they have agreed to, through hook or crook, through skillful lies and misleading claims, through utilizing the internet to grab all kinds of names of innocent people who they use as misinformation, and then clump them together with 2 or 3 accounts from RT or something. They use that to get rich. Now, what did Matt Taibbi recently say? What did he call it? The disinformation complex or something like that. The whatever it was complex that he called it. You guys know what he said. But what Taibbi's last group of tweets, right? His last Twitter files release showed exactly what I'm saying. It showed that there is a complex of groups and organizations and think tanks that are directly related to the government, that are handsomely rewarded for pushing a narrative, and that their job is to attack anyone and ostracize anyone who goes outside of the narrative, regardless of whether or not they're telling the truth or lying, especially if they're telling the truth. And they're handsomely rewarded for that. And that complex is growing. That's the grift. And so they hate Taibbi. They hate this guy. They don't hate him because of just he's met Taibbi or because he's lying or saying something that's untrue. He's exposing the very core of neoliberalism, which is that it's a self-serving racket, that it's a grift, that it's a scam. And all neoliberalism does is extracts money from the bottom and sends it to the top, and then they spread it around. And the Republicans, so people say, well, are Republicans neoliberals? Let me give you the Republicans part of the scam. The Republicans' job is to find ways to convince their people that when they're extracting money from the poor and giving it to the rich, that they're doing it to help the working class. So here's what happens. The average conservative voter says, we want more money and we want a tax cut. And the Republicans say, gotcha, chum. You're getting your tax cuts, right? And then they write up all these tax cuts and they say, the liberals don't want tax cuts, but we want tax cuts. What they're giving you is austerity, right? We got to do tax cuts. We're going to give you the biggest tax cuts ever. And you say, yay, big tax cuts. And they write up their tax cuts. and they cut the taxes for the richest corporations in the world, and they cut the taxes for the billionaires, and they call it the death tax, the inheritance tax. They cut the taxes for the people who are leaving a fortune to their kids, and they cut all those taxes. And somewhere in the bottom of that pie, you get a crumb. And they say, remember George Bush? W. Bush, he did these gigantic tax cuts, and he gave people like, I forgot what, $724 check they got. The billionaires got a $7 million and $24 check. So the game of the Republicans, their side of it is the austerity side. We want to cut money for the poor because, and they got a scam too. We must cut food stamps for the poor. Why is that? Well, the poor are lazy, and if you just cut their food stamps and they don't have any food, they'll work harder. What about the rich? Well, the rich must be rewarded because they're working hard. So you must reward the rich. That way, they'll invest the money, and the poor people will see them being rewarded, and they'll work harder. See, the concept is poor people are poor because they're lazy and they don't work hard enough. Rich people are rich because they work hard. Just it's a Calvinism, a manner of Calvinism that says God, that look, how do I, the nobility class, right, during Calvinist times, right, when it was invented, the nobleman, the wealthy nobleman would say, this is God's order. God decided that I should be a wealthy nobleman. How do you know? Because I'm a wealthy nobleman. Doesn't that just tell you right there that God decided that I should be a wealthy nobleman and you should be poor? So, hey, what are you trying to push back against God's manner of doing things, right? God decided it. The fact that I am a wealthy nobleman proves that I should be. And the fact that you're poor proves that God decided this order. Hey, don't push back against that order, right? It's the same kind of thing. Well, the fact that they're rich shows that they work harder, and the fact that they're poor shows that they're lazier. So we give more. It's neoliberalism. They always got an excuse. I don't care how absurd, they can always come up with an excuse. And the excuse of neoliberalism always works like this. We need to take more from the poor and give it to the rich. The Democrats just got a different way of doing it. But it's the exact same thing. An example, go to Africa and Latin America, and the countries are poor. And you'll say, why are those countries poor? Well, they just don't have the cultural wherewithal that we do. And when you look at history, you're like, wait a minute, we overthrew their country every single time. We put in puppet compradors, and we're stealing their resources to this day. We're robbing them blind. That's why they're poor. No, they're not where we are, intellectually and culturally, and so they're behind. It's the same scam. You rip people off, you create an environment where they're impoverished, you blame them for that, and then you use that as an excuse to steal all the money from the poor and give it to the rich, and the rich get richer and richer and richer. And that's also, what is it? The same thing with political fascism. All the power in political fascism goes to the top. So neoliberalism aligns perfectly with fascism because it's a method of fascism. And then neoliberalism then takes the woke ideology and adds that to it and says, we're here to help the marginalized communities. And then you take some guy and Garland says, hey, you're screwing me over. And they say, okay, yeah, we'll help you out. We got a black guy now who's in charge. And I'll say, well, he's screwing me over too. Yeah, but he's also gay, non-binary, indigenous, and all these other things. And they'll say, there you go. Tokenism is used in place of actual diversity of thought and diversity of ideology. Instead, they just use tokenism. We're going to give you neoliberalism. We'll give you neoliberalism in a white guy, a black guy, a gay person, a trans person, or whatever. But all of them are going to have the same policies in neoliberalism. We'll just keep trying to use a rainbow to fool you. And so now what we see in these hearings, we see the ugly face. I think if you watch those hearings, you see the ugly face of neoliberalism come out in the Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the authoritarianism, the anger and fury against Matt Taibbi. So you're making money, Matt Taibbi. Do you deny that you have more followers than before? And Taibbi's like, well, I mean, shut up. And do you deny that you're making more money than you did before? Well, actually, I mean, shut up. And do you deny? And I'm like, did you let the guy finish? You ask him a question, and as soon as he tries to answer, you're like, shut up. Yes or no? Yes or no? Are you still beating your wife? Wait a minute, I'm not even mad. Yeah, shut up, Matt Taibbi. And that's the way they play the game. And you can see the ugly face of it. You can see these Democrats coming out, man. They're coming out with their fangs and their claws baring because they are furious at Matt Taibbi. And you know what? If they're furious at you, you're doing the right thing, probably. They're furious at Matt Taibbi because he's exposing them. He's exposing neoliberalism at its core, that it is nothing but a bunch of false narratives being pushed, number one. And number two, that it's a grift. And now they're really pissed because he's gotten to the part that it's a grift. Now, let me say this. If you think the Republicans are some kind of, superheroes, if you think they got capes on, I got a bridge to sell you that goes from Manhattan to Brooklyn. Okay. No, they're there. I will say this about the Republicans. In these particular circumstances, they do have more concern about free speech. But watch what happens when they get on their China crusade. And somebody says, "Well, I don't think China's all that bad." Shut that man up! He must be thrown off Twitter and everything. You watch. It's a different strain of fascism. It's an imperialist fascism. It's a warmongering fascism that they all agree on, but they just have different targets. So when the Republicans decide, when they get their opportunity to go all out for China, they're going to be the same. Just a different, they're going to be the same in that they're going to fight murderously to protect their narrative of hate against China. They will do that. They're not going to want people to come out once they accuse China of like having a friggin' balloon or something. They don't want people to come out and say, "Well, here's the information on the balloon. It really was a weather." But no, they ain't going to be for that. But right now, it serves their purpose. So for now, they'll be like, "Yeah, oh, this is terrible. This is," and I believe, to be quite frank, that they really are concerned about free speech because there were issues that they had concerns with. And so because it hurt them and because they felt oppressed and because they felt that their people and their voices were being shut down, I mean, there's a certain self-serving aspect to it. They felt that their voices were being shut down, so they were speaking up about that for themselves more so than anybody else. You literally had conservative congressmen who were losing their Twitter accounts for saying things that were certainly legitimate, and they had every right to say. So yeah, they from a self-serving perspective, look, if you say something that I agree with and it works for me, then that's fine. So in these particular hearings, I will be quite frank with you. In these particular hearings, I think the Republicans do have the moral high ground, and the Democrats are furious. Part of it is this. Let me add this. Do not underestimate the influence of the neocons, because when George W. Bush was in, the neocons were in the Republican Party. The Newlands and all of these people were, Newland is one of the linchpins. These people were working with Dick Cheney and Bush and these people, right? So they controlled the Republican Party. So when Bush went out, Hillary came, who's one of the neocons. Hillary got into the Obama cabinet, and she brought the neocons, the Newlands and the Flournoys and all of these other low-life neocons. She brought them with her into the Democratic Party. 2016, she really went all out to inject them in the 2016 race, to inject the neocons into the Democratic Party. And ultimately, she was instrumental in ushering the neocons from the Republican Party into the Democratic Party. And when you bring those people, when you bring the Bill Kristols of the world and the Max Boots of the world into your house, you got a fascist house. When you bring them into your party, there ain't no way about it. You got a fascist party. And there were people there. They were able to get the Hillary Clintons, the Joe Bidens of the world to the top. And that, guess what? It's pure neoliberal fascism. That's what the Democratic Party is right now. Pure neoliberal fascism. And if you ever had any doubt about that, watch those hearings and watch, because they're not just talking. This is not to them, the hearings with Taibbi, this is not just a discussion to talk about what Taibbi's done. They are furious at Taibbi because he's hitting them where they eat now. It's one thing to show the lies in the narrative. It's one thing to demonstrate that the FBI, that members of the Democratic Party, that Congress members, people, police departments all over the place were just grabbing any random name that they wanted. They were funneling it through the FBI to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever, and they're getting these people thrown off. That's one thing to show. Taibbi's went too far now. He's shown the grift. He's now showing that there was a whole complex of think tanks who were eating very well, who were getting paid, who were making big money. And so now if you say to yourself, why would somebody take RT and a Sputnik and then add 10,000 names of Joe Blows who happen to be a Trump voter or whatever, or libertarian or whoever the hell they could find that looked suspicious that they didn't like, would take all these names, package that together, and throw it over to Twitter and say, get rid of them all. Why would they do that? They do that because they're getting a lot of money to do that. That's part of the neoliberal scam. Let me compare that to 2008. Let me do that. Let me compare that. Here's a good comparison. 2008. There was something called ninja loans. No income, no job, no assets. Ninja, right? So there's a loan, $650,000 house in Florida. You want that house, and I want to sell it to you. Why I want to sell it to you? Because my bank wants lots of loans. So I say to you, here's what I'll do. You buy that house, and you say, but I don't have any income. I don't have any job, and I don't have any assets. Fair enough. You take this $650,000 house. I will give you this check for $50,000 as soon as you take it. Oh, yeah, that's great. And you don't have to pay anything for 2 years. I'll take it. Right. So now I'm in a $650,000 house. Well, number one, I'm living free for 2 years, and you just gave me 50, 25 grand, whatever. And I'm living free of charge for 2 years. At the end of that 2 years, I'm walking. What do I care? I can save my money for 2 years. Who wouldn't take that? Right. And then a lot of people do that at the end of those 2 years. They file bankruptcy. And guess what? Everything's dismissed and they ride it out. Right. So there's the scam. Why would somebody give me that loan? Because they want 10,000 loans like that. They then bundle 10,000 of these loans that they know are going to bust. They know in 2 years, every one of those people are going to walk out, but they bundle them all together. They get a few good loans and they bundle all these loans together and they sell the loans. You notice the pattern? If you're the Alliance for Securing Democracy, you get an RT account and a Sputnik account and a couple journalists that work for RT and Sputnik, and you bundle that with 10,000 names that are just Joe Blow Trump supporters, and then you give it to the FBI and you say the FBI, look, they're all Russian accounts, and the FBI, what did you do? You took a couple of things that really didn't have much to it, but you pretended it did, and you bundled all this other stuff and you used it to make a fortune. You used it to justify all the money that's coming into the Alliance for Security of Democracies and the Atlantic Council and all of this stuff from all of these foundations by taking a couple things and putting a whole bunch of things with it. In 2008, you did with those loans, right? You got a couple decent loans and you got 10,000 bad loans. Now, what did they do with those loans at that point in 2008? I got 10,000 loans, and I know in 2 years, every one of them is going to collapse because they're ninja loans. I then sell those loans to Chase, JP Morgan, Chase, whatever, right? I then sell 10,000 bad loans to them. I then go and get them rated AAA, even though they're trash. And then I sell 10,000 of them to JP Morgan Chase, right? Then JP Morgan goes to AIG, which is a reinsurer, and they do what's called a credit default swap. They say, hey, look, here's what we want to do. I got 10,000 loans. They're worth $10 billion. I don't know. We just put a number. They're worth $10 billion. I want $10 billion worth of insurance on these loans. So if these loans all collapse, you pay them off. And AIG says, I'll take it. Oh, how are the loans? They're all AAA credit loans. Okay. So now AIG has just done an insurance. They've now taken the credit default liability for those loans, a credit default swap. I got $10 billion worth of loans that I know are going to crash. But when they crash, AIGs, they've got to take the default hit for it and pay me off. So it's like it's the equivalent of taking your house, taking out insurance and burning it down. And they did that all across everywhere, all over the place. They took bad loans, they reinsured them through AIG. And then when they all crashed, AIG then said, I don't have the money to pay off all of these loans. We got $3 trillion worth of loans. I don't have the money to pay that off. And the government came in and said, AIG, here's the money. And AIG said, thank you. And it gave the money back to the banks. And the bank said, thank you very much. And nobody ever held the banks accountable and said, what you did was wrong and illegal. They just said, okay, that's fine. Go out and do it again. There we go. There you have neoliberalism. That's how it works. And if it's on Twitter, you've got the Alliance for Securing Democracies, Hamilton 68, and all these others. And that's all they do. They just wanted to get 10,000, 20,000, 40,000 Twitter accounts. They didn't give a damn if the people in those Twitter accounts were valid or invalid. They wanted to get a bunch of Twitter accounts so they could send them to Twitter and say, do something with them, throw them all off. And then they could go to their whoever's paying them, hey, Koch brothers, Soros, whoever the hell, State Department, you got to give us money to fight disinformation. Really, what have you done? We've had 573,251 bad Twitter accounts thrown off over the last 6 months. Okay, here's your money. Of those, one of them was bad. The other 500,270 were good. But it was a scam so that they could go back and tell their donors, pay me lots of money. That's the grift now that nobody's talking about that grift. That's the grift that Taibbi exposed. So now they are all furious at Matt Taibbi because he let the cat out of the bag. It's fascism. It is neoliberal fascism. It is making money with the grift while you go around the world. And in order to do that, you have to keep expanding. Why is it that they're going to get they're after Russia and China and Iran and North Korea? Because fascism is by its nature expansionism. It's expansionist. They have to continue to expand. They need more stuff. Let me give you an example of why they're pissed at China right now. Oh, it's the CCP. It's this, it's that. I'll give you an example of what happened in Ethiopia. So what happens in Ethiopia is this. The United States gives Ethiopia this special deal where we'll buy your manufactured goods and there's no tariffs on it. So they can come in and you can sell them in the US and you can make money and it'll work out well for you. Ethiopia is great. So the United States then decides they're going to overthrow the government of Ethiopia, the TPLF, really it's considered an ethno-fascist organization, Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, the US, then gives them lots of money, as they always do, and try to overthrow the government. Oh, by the way, who came from the TPLF? Dr. What's his name? Tedros, what's his name? The guy in charge of the WHO. He came from the TPLF. He was actually accused of being involved in medical genocides while he was with the TPLF. Might I add this? He ain't a medical doctor. How the hell do you get in charge of the WHO when you're not a medical doctor? But that's another story. So that's even more, of course. That's not going to shock anybody. But so the U.S. fails. And I might add, Russia and China might have helped the government of Ethiopia a bit so that they might have given them some drones and things of that nature. They knocked the hell out of the TPLF. The TPLF falls. The U.S. now, their attempt to overthrow the government of Ethiopia has fallen. So the U.S. then says, well, you sons of bitches, we'll fix you. We're going to withdraw our agreement with you on your goods and tariffs so you can no longer sell stuff here and it's going to hurt your economy severely. And the Ethiopians go, man, that really sucks. You tried to overthrow our government. That didn't work. So now you're going to hurt us economically. China says, not so fast. China says they only got 330 million Ethiopia. We got 1.4 billion people. Here's what we'll do. We'll give you the same deal. Come on over with us. And Ethiopia says, great. Next thing you know, China's building roads, their buildings, their power plant. They're building all this stuff all over Ethiopia. Ethiopia's now got a deal with China that's better than the one they had with US because they got a bigger market. And the US is like, God damn it. I'm sick of these people. We screw over a country. We can't even overthrow their government anymore because these bastards got to come in and block us. And now we're going to impoverish and starve the people like we do. And here comes China to bail them out. Now, do you understand why they hate China? And they're going to tell you it's a freaking balloon. Yeah, why do you hate them? It's a balloon, that weather balloon. They're going to kill us all with it. Weather will be ballooned to death. This gigantic balloon is going to fall over the country and we'll all be smothered. That's the problem. In reality, it is simply that they're fascist bastards. And they want the opportunity to strong-arm people like gangsters around the world. And China's throwing a monkey wrench. And Russia's doing the same thing. Russia's like, hey, we can come in and build your power plant. And like in African countries, like, yeah, that sounds good. We'll take a power plant. Let's do it. And they work out a deal. Right now, which country in the world is the foremost country in building nuclear power plants and going around the world and have the most expertise and ability and the most contracts and all of that to build nuclear power plants around the world? Russia. Russia's there at the top now. They've taken over from us. The U.S. doesn't like that crap. So Russia must fall, China must fall. So these are fascists. And in order to do that, there are people like me and you who will be like, we just want the truth. What's this thing about? What's it about? And when somebody tells us the truth, we're going to try to spread it to others. We're going to say to other people, look, here's what I heard. So you've got, I keep going back to it. You've got alternative media out here. saying, look, there's a different way to look at things. There's a different way to think. There are different options. Let's look at these things different. Let's evaluate some things. You've got people saying, and there's nothing wrong with this. You got people saying, hey, I like whatever, Italy. Italy's a great country. Love Italy. And they can wear Italian, and I love Italian food, and the Italian women are beautiful. I drive an Italian car. It's okay to be an Italy file, right? To love Italy. You got other people saying, nah, the country I like is fill in the blank, right? Now it's Greece that I like. Greek food, you got to admit Greek food is good, right? Greek culture, it's okay to do that. Oh yeah, Greek food's great. The culture is wonderful. It's the best, right? And there's other people that say, I've been studying Russia, me for a year, for instance. I've been studying Russia for years. I find Russia intriguing. I love the culture of Russia, the great artists they've had, and the poets, and the Dostoevsky and Tchaikovsky, and on and on and on, right? There are beautiful things about Russia. So you can be an Italiophile or Francophile, you can study French history, but if somebody like me says, I find Russia a very interesting country, or let's say somebody says, I find China a very interesting country, if you study martial arts and all this, all the beautiful, I studied the philosophy of Zen. Man, the Asian culture is really interesting. The Hindu culture, those kinds of things are interesting, but it's okay to walk around with a stinking Italian flag, a French flag, or a Greek or something like that. It's okay to do that. But if you're like, hey, I kind of like Russia or China, and I think they're interesting cultures and I want to study them, and I'm a Russophile or a Chinophile, they're official adversaries, or Iran. Oh, no, they're official adversaries. We got to hate them. No, I can like any country I want to. I can find any country I want to interesting, and I find Russia a very interesting country. Let me finish this. This is what I truly believe. The reason they hate Russia is because in the early part of a certain point of time, the peasants overthrew the czars. That's what I think. I may be wrong, but I think that's what it is. That you have a bunch of people who are feudalists at heart, who believe that the noble class should rule. And at a point in time in Russia, and might I add, Russia's got a lot of natural resources that they want to steal. Russia's, they got a lot of good stuff there, and they want to steal their stuff. And they don't like the fact that the Russians overthrew the czars. They don't like that. And the Russians are independent. They're like, we got our culture. We're kind of conservative. This is the way we do things. Leave us alone. We'll do our way. You'll do yours. They hate that. They hate that. They want to absorb them. The Russians are like, we ain't doing the whole woke thing. It ain't us. They hate that. They don't want to give them a, you're right. So, bottom line is this. This is where we are. And, I'm not going to lionize the Republicans at this point and say they're wonderful and great. No, they're not. They're doing the right thing now. When you do the right thing, I will say, when it comes to the Twitter files and stuff like that, they're doing the right thing. But these bastards are trying to drag us into a World War III with China, just like the Democrats. And they're about to come together and ignore all of our needs and go full neoliberal and say, we got to give $1 trillion to the military industrial complex. We got to invest more in nuclear war so we can wipe out all humanity. They're about to join their neoliberal brethren in doing horrible things. So let's not get carried away in thinking that these people are, the second coming of some Democrat of the founding fathers or whatever the hell. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. So let me look before I go. And see if there are any. I just wanted to rattle off for a while in the morning, if you don't mind. Okay, we got some super chats. And good old Sparky, Telecom Act of 96 allowed news media consolidation and unfettered electronic surveillance of U.S. citizens, repealed telecommunications. There you go. Bill Clinton starting off early with that neoliberalism. Him and Reagan, they were neoliberals. Russian ally says the Roman weapon fascist is still glorified. There we go. Let's go with this. Shankarin, hello from India, Garland. The disinfo topic has many dimensions from domestic to international levels. Do you know that the Nazi symbol was called hooked cross by Hitler? It was misappropriated to Hindu religious symbol swastika. Interesting. All right. Thanks a lot. Sparky, carpetbaggers. You got it, Sparkster. Sparky's always on top of the situation. I'll tell you that right now. Love your words, but to save trouble, no comment. Oh, thank you very much, Treble and Gail. I don't know if I'm making any sense half the time. Half the time I'll do a video and I'll say, well, that one didn't make much sense. I guess I made a complete idiot out of myself. And people say, that's my favorite video. And I'll be like, that's your favorite video? It's like my least favorite. All right. Juanita Chicken says, thank you, Garland. Juanita Chicken. I mean, that usually happens when I just walk away and say, man, I should just delete the video. That video, that really sucks. But I'll just leave it there. And people say, that's my favorite. Matt Taibbi exposed 2008 financial crisis lowlifes too. Globalists may be pissed at him. Oh yeah, they got some real anger at Matt Taibbi. Hi, Mr. Garland Nixon. Talk about Tucker Carlson exposes January 6th. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That's good stuff. The January 6th, again, that's I guess for the liberals, that's the Pearl Harbor for liberals, January 6th. You know, it's like the end of times for liberals when some people, and when you see the videos of January 6th, I'll talk about that sometime. You know, for God's sake, the police like open the door, let people wander through. I saw people like walking around looking like tourists, la, 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 and they're going to treat them like, you know, they were storming the place with, you know, trying to murder people. And they're like, yes, they wanted to kill Mike Pence. And they were there to murder and they killed Brian Sicknick. They beat him to death with a fire extinguisher. And you see Sicknick, like the thing's over. He's walking around, you know, mind his own business. It's just such a fraud. You are the anti-Colin Powell for us conservatives of color. Thank you. You're at it really. Good morning, Garland. Treat before AM wake up. All right. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. I think that's it. Is that it? All right. Have a wonderful day. And as usual, you know, I'm going to say all the stuff that I usually say. Anything else? Anything else here that hearing Scott Joplin music? Yeah, not me. They wanted to kill AOC, she said. The foundation of U.S. power is lies, thefts, and murders, colonization. Yeah, you are correct there. Of course, you see my Patreon stuff right there. So if you can do Patreon, that's fine. Patreon.com/Garland Nixon. PayPal is an option. Buy me a coffee, which you can do you can now do PayPal you can now do PayPal in the same way that you do Patreon now. It allows you to do monthly stuff. It's right there. You can click on that. And of course, Twitter, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Telegram, and all of those places. Is that it? Oh, rockfin.com/Garland Nixon. As I always say about Rockfin, everybody who is on YouTube should have an alternative platform. There's lots of them. I'm going to get Rumble here soon, hopefully this weekend. Get set up on Rumble, which is I really need to. But Rockfin is what I chose, and I go with Rockfin right now because two things: it's free speech. Rockfin's got a lot of good shows on it. You really ought to look around on Rockfin. You'll love the shows on there. A lot of great people. And the real good conspiracy theorists, the best conspiracy theorists are on Rockfin. I'm going to tell you that. All the best conspiracy theorists on Rockfin. And so you'll love Rockfin. It's a lot of fun. But at any rate, rockfin.com, you can become a member there. Doesn't cost you anything. And there's no advertisements. And like I said, look around. You'll really love Rockfin. It's one of my favorites. And if you can, Rockfin does stay on the air. They allow subscribers. A subscriber's $14.99 a month. If you can afford it, that would really help the channel. I'd appreciate it. If you sign up for a year, they knock off a couple of months, so it's considerably cheaper than $12 a month or something like that. So if you can do it, and subscribers, every Wednesday I do a subscriber only show. It's a great show from 9 to 10 a.m. with Scott Ritter. That's for my subscribers on Rockfin, subscriber only show. 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Rockfin. Thanks a lot, everybody. But if you can't afford it, keep your money. If you cannot afford it, don't worry about it. Just go over there, subscribe. Be a member of Rockfin. It doesn't cost you anything. You can see everything I have there. And I've even got a couple videos on YouTube that have been censored and deleted on YouTube that are still there on Rockfin because they don't do censorship and deleting, and they don't do advertisements. You'll love it. All right. Thanks a lot, you guys. Reckless Abandon's around. Oh, my God. Reckless Abandon. I always love Reckless Abandon. We've been hanging out for many years. Thanks a lot. Peace. I'm out.